Hey everyone, it's Denise Brown from caringourway.com. And this is a quick overview of a plan we have for you after a family member's diagnosis. I used to think that a diagnosis was something like what happened for my dad in 2004. He received a bladder cancer diagnosis, and that is an example of a diagnosis. But as I continued to help my parents, I also realized that there are other more informal diagnoses that they receive, and as their family caregivers, we receive as well. There's a diagnosis around declines, around increasing care needs, when there's a referral to a program like palliative care, when there is more use, so to speak, of different types of community services like adult day. It might be because a family member needs more supervision and support. And I also think the day that a family member hears that they can no longer drive, that driving is not a possibility, that's diagnosis day. And then I think the day when there's a referral to hospice and hospice services start is another diagnosis day. So as I give you this overview, know that you don't use it just once, that you use it throughout your caregiving experience, because there's going to be other days when you receive an informal diagnosis about your caree. So this plan includes a wheel. They all include a wheel. And in the Encyclopedia of Family Caregiving, there's also a very simple booklet that goes with this wheel. The wheel is included in the booklet, and you can download that booklet for free. And then you can join me on the first Tuesday of every month at 1 p.m. Eastern Time for a conversation around a recent diagnosis that a family member has received. I also want to mention too, now that I'm thinking this out loud, we also receive a diagnosis as family caregivers. And so the conversation about a diagnosis can be about our caree, and it also can be about us as family caregivers and as individuals. And sometimes I think our diagnosis can be, I am just stressed out, I am burnt out. And that's a diagnosis. Again, it's informal, but it's important to talk about. So here's what the tool looks like. And as usual, there are 8 different categories. The 8 categories are not the only categories. It's just a place for us to start. So when there's a diagnosis, we know that we start to think about what's next. And certainly thinking through what the legal documents are that we need and what our caree needs is important to think about. So it's thinking about durable powers of attorney, for instance. Now, as we continue through caregiving, we want to review this legal document to make sure that it still reflects the current family situation and the current situation with our caree. So for instance, in my family, my parents updated their durable powers of attorney once, and we probably need to do it again, but we haven't gotten to it. And it was when my sister, who was listed as one of the backups to me as a durable power of attorney, just removed herself completely from helping. And then we knew there's no way that she would be the backup for me if I'm not available. So then we updated all those documents. My brother, who died, was a backup as well. And we still haven't updated my father's durable power of attorney. My brother died, and then my mother really declined and then died a year later. So we were really focused on her care, knowing that we needed to update my father's durable power of attorney, but we just couldn't get to it. It's on the list though. And then we want to review the money situation because we want to understand what the budget of care for care is. And of course, any conversations about money are difficult and touchy. So it could be that you start a conversation about finances with your caree, and your caree says, I ain't telling you. And then you can say, okay, you don't have to tell me the specifics, but tell me where you bank, tell me who your financial planner is, Tell me who the bank trust officer is, the specifics. Something that I did years ago that I'm so grateful I did is I asked my dad to introduce me to his financial planner. And I asked my parents to introduce me to their attorney, and that introduction to their attorney started the conversation about, oh my gosh, we've got to update these powers of attorney. The introduction to the financial planner was really helpful too, because my dad said, okay, I'll introduce you. Let's go to his office. And then in the conversation with the financial planner, we realized that my parents' beneficiaries needed to be updated. So we did that. So again, if your caree says, I'm not telling you specifics, then ask for an introduction to the relationship. Oh, I'm thinking about getting a financial planner. I'd love to meet yours. And then I would just love to know if something happens, how to get a hold of your financial planner. I found it so helpful to have that introduction, very helpful. And then it also removes some of the uncertainty of, what do I do after they die? What do I do? Because the financial planner now is someone I know. The word on this wheel that I think a lot of people wonder about is share. What does share mean? So a lot of people think, oh, it's about sharing the care, but I also think it's about sharing the news. Because when someone receives a diagnosis, they might not be ready to share. And then we wonder, how do I respect their request for privacy when people are asking me, your father doesn't look that well, what's going on? How do I answer that question? And then there's also the question of, okay, who gets notified? And then how do you notify them? And then how do you keep them up to date? So the communication around the diagnosis, it seems like, oh, it'll be straightforward. And it is not straightforward, because it's a fearful time for our carees and then for others in our family, as well as for ourselves. So thinking through, how do we share? How do we respect what our caree wants in terms of how the news is shared is important. So for instance, if your caree receives a diagnosis and says to you, I don't want to tell anyone right now, you can say, I totally understand. Let's revisit this topic in another 3 weeks and see how you feel. In the meantime, if someone asks me about you, how would you like me to respond? So then your caree can say what words you can use, and that will help you because you're not guessing. You're not trying to figure out, oh gosh, how do I read my caree's mind? Ask. When a family member receives a diagnosis, there also is this insight into life is not forever. Even if the diagnosis does not include something that feels like terminal within the next few years, terminal within the next decade, there still is this insight that, oh my gosh, we are not promised forever. And that insight leads to, I think, a greater understanding of what we value and then what our priorities are because of what we value. So you could have a conversation with a caree at some point about, okay, now that you have this diagnosis, I'm curious, what do you value about your day? What do you value about our approach to treatment and your plan of care? What do you value about our family and the rituals we have in the family? And then you can also have a conversation with your immediate family, for instance, maybe your spouse or maybe your kids. And you also can take a little time to reflect on your values and priorities now. And then timing relates to timing of decisions, timing of next steps, timing of conversations. And you'll know that there are some conversations that need to be done at the right time. So you want to be aware of timing, not just as it relates to what's our next step with the treatment. When do we have to make a decision? What's the timing around our second opinion? But it's also timing around when do you talk with your caree about certain situations? And when do you talk to other family members about certain situations? Okay, so in my family, I always felt like I had an opportunity to talk out our next steps as it relates to our parents when we were all together. Now, other family members did not appreciate this. However, I just felt like everybody should be on the same page and everyone should know. So I had been working with my parents for years on trying to understand their wishes around their funeral. They are devout Catholics. I knew that would drive what the funeral looked like, but I needed to know whether or not they wanted to be cremated or buried. Who should come? We have this sibling who is not involved in the family. How do we manage her presence in these situations? So there was a family get together, it probably was Easter in the spring of 2021. And I had been moving into cremation and solidifying the plans for cremations. I had been talking to my parents. They had decided on cremation. So I was going to the cremation society to get information. So I thought, okay, everybody is here. My parents, my siblings, we're all here. I'm just going to say, here's what's happening around solidifying plans for mom and dad. And my sister, I have a couple sisters, my younger sister, who is very involved and very helpful and a very good friend, had said, oh my gosh, why are we talking about this now? And I said, well, I just want everybody to know it's important to me that everybody's on the same page and that you are aware of what I'm doing. And my sister was like, we don't need to be worrying about this with mom and dad. And I thought, well, that is actually not true at all, but I get it. It was too much for her. So that would have been in April. So in August, my brother died suddenly. And then we went through the whole process of funeral planning, burying him, helping my sister-in-law plan and pay for everything. It was a nightmare. And after that, my sister said, okay, I get it now. I get why we talk about these things. I get why we make the plans. And then she was on board. And it was just such an unfortunate, sad, heartbreaking situation that happened that helped her see that we have to talk about these things. We have to. Okay, but we also have to be aware of timing, I guess. And for me, I felt the right time was when everybody was together. And then when people would push back, I would say, okay, I just want you to know. And then I would move on. And then we can have conversations about wellness, and it's really about quality of life after a diagnosis. And being aware that a caree's definition of quality of life changes as the disease progresses. And it's important to think about what our definition of quality of life is for ourselves. We have quality of life as well. And it's important that we know it, we protect it, and we stick with it. And I was in a situation a couple of years ago where I was really starting to get some frustration around what my parents were asking of me. And I was talking it out with my niece, and she said, Aunt Denise, your quality of life matters too. And I was like, oh my God, my quality of life matters too. Wow. And I knew that, but the way she phrased it with quality of life, I thought, boy, that is spot on. Our quality of life matters too. So our wellness, I think, directly relates to how we define quality of life. And we can define it based on the day of the week, based on the time of the day, based on the season, based on our energy. We can define it over and over and over based on what our situation is, what the circumstances is, and where our caree is in a disease process. Okay, so we went around the wheel. And again, all conversations after a diagnosis are a process, and it's checking in, it's starting a conversation, it's asking for others to engage in the conversation and not waiting. I will also say that this is one of the greatest frustrations, I think, in a caregiving experience, is that if we don't, chances are no one else will. And that is incredibly frustrating because you think, what is wrong with these people that they don't step up and have the conversation and support us and help us figure it out? It's the reality. And if we wait for someone else to step up, we'll be waiting forever. And that relates to other family members, healthcare professionals, community services, our friends. We have to speak up and speak out, and we can't wait for someone else to do it for us. We have to do it. It is frustrating, it is draining, and it is actually ultimately helpful. So if you are thinking, well, I'll wait, rather than waiting, think through, how can you at least start the conversation? How can you start the process? What's the next step you can take? Because again, you don't want to waste time, and waiting for the wrong reasons will waste your time. Now, sometimes waiting is an okay thing to do. So for instance, if you are tired in the afternoon and you think, oh my gosh, I have to do something, but I'm too tired to do it, waiting until the next day is a smart thing to do. So you'll know the difference between smart waiting and wasteful waiting, because your guilt will start to nag you when it's wasteful waiting. But it's important to know that if you are waiting for someone else to do the hard work, I wish I could tell you that someone will step up. Chances are they won't. So rather than wait, step up. Step up. And we'll support you as you do it. Know that we are behind you. We are next to you. We understand. We are here to support you. Okay, so that's the after the diagnosis planning session. Again, that you can download, that gives you some insights and some more information about this. And it also includes the wheel. And then if we can help you with a conversation, please let us know. And our certified caregiving consultants can help you with these conversations too. They can help you plan it out. They can actually role play with you. They can be your caree. You can practice with them. And you can meet our certified caregiving consultants in our group called the Caregiving Department, which is included with your encyclopedia of family caregiving. Okay, I hope you found this helpful. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.